Welcome to this video on the relationship between postmodernism and poststructuralism. I'm Andrew Chapman. I'm a professor of philosophy, and I'll be your guide. Postmodernism and poststructuralism are two influential movements that emerged in the mid to late 20th century, profoundly impacting philosophy, literature, art, and the social sciences. While they share certain similarities, they're distinct in their origins, methodologies, and applications. This video aims to provide a detailed exploration of both postmodernism and poststructuralism, emphasizing postmodernism as a cultural phenomenon and way of life, and poststructuralism as an analytical framework and methodology. We'll highlight their key characteristics, major figures, examples, and the ways in which they relate to and differ from one another. Postmodernism is a broad cultural, intellectual, and artistic movement that emerged as a reaction against modernism and the Enlightenment's emphasis on reason, objectivity, and progress. It represents a shift in society's perceptions and experiences, questioning the existence of universal truths and grand narratives that claim to explain reality comprehensively. The term postmodernism gained prominence in the late 20th century, permeating various aspects of culture and daily life, including art, architecture, literature, film, music, and fashion. One of the central features of postmodernism is its skepticism toward meta-narratives, overarching stories or theories that claim to provide comprehensive explanations for historical events or human experiences. Jean-François Lyotard, in his seminal work from 1979, The Postmodern Condition, defined postmodernism as, quote, incredulity toward meta-narratives. This skepticism arises from the recognition of the diversity of human experiences and the plurality of perspectives in a globalized world. Postmodernism embodies a way of life characterized by relativism, that is, positing that truth and moral values are not absolute, but are instead relative to individual or cultural perspectives. This relativism challenges the idea of objective knowledge and universal standards, leading to a more fragmented and decentralized understanding of reality. The postmodern world is marked by saturation from media and consumerism, and by the existence of multiple, often contradictory realities, reflecting the complexities and contradictions of contemporary society. In art and literature, postmodernism frequently employs pastiche, irony, and parody, blending different styles and genres to break down the boundaries between high and low culture. This approach mirrors the postmodern lived experience, where traditional hierarchies and distinctions are questioned or dissolved. Intertextuality is another significant aspect, highlighting the interconnectedness of texts and the idea that meaning arises from the relationships between texts rather than from individual texts in isolation. In architecture, postmodernism rejects the minimalist and functionalist aspects of modernism, favoring eclecticism and ornamentation. Buildings like the Guggenheim Museum Bilbao, designed by Frank Gehry and opened in 1997, showcase unconventional shapes and a playful mix of materials, symbolizing the complexity and diversity of postmodern society. In literature, postmodern works often feature nonlinear narratives, unreliable narrators, and metafictional elements that challenge traditional storytelling methods. Thomas Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow from 1973, for example, employs a fragmented narrative structure and a multitude of voices, reflecting the chaotic and multifaceted nature of contemporary life. In visual arts, postmodernism is exemplified by movements like pop art, which blurs the boundaries between high art and popular culture. Andy Warhol's Campbell's Soup Cans and Marilyn's Diptych, for example, both from 1962, use imagery from mass media and consumer goods to question traditional notions of originality and authenticity. In film, directors like Quentin Tarantino incorporate nonlinear storytelling, pastiche, and genre blending, creating works that are self-referential and intertextual. 1994's Pulp Fiction, for instance, plays with narrative structure and genre conventions, embodying postmodern cinematic techniques. Major figures in postmodernism include Jean-François Lyotard, whose previously mentioned work, The Postmodern Condition from 1979, laid the foundational framework for postmodern thought by challenging the validity of grand narratives and emphasizing the fragmented nature of knowledge. Frederick Jameson, a Marxist critic, explored the cultural and economic dimensions of postmodernism in his 1991 work, Postmodernism, or the Cultural Logic of Late Capitalism, analyzing how late capitalist society shapes cultural production and consciousness. Jean Baudrillard is renowned for his theories of simulacra and hyperreality, particularly articulated in 1981's Simulacra and Simulation, where he examines the ways in which reality is constructed and mediated through symbols and signs in a postmodern world. Additionally, Jacques Derrida, although primarily associated with poststructuralism and deconstruction, has significantly influenced postmodernism through his critique of language and meaning, challenging the stability and coherence of texts and concepts. Postmodernism as a cultural phenomenon reflects the complexities of a post-industrial, globalized world, where information is abundant, identities are fluid, and traditional boundaries are blurred. It embodies a way of life that is characterized by a heightened awareness of the constructed nature of reality, a skepticism toward authority and universal truths, and an embrace of diversity and pluralism. Poststructuralism, on the other hand, is an intellectual movement that emerged in the 1960s and 70s, primarily in France, as a response to structuralism and as a way of making sense of and critiquing the changing cultural dynamics of a postmodern world. While structuralism sought to understand the underlying structures that make meaning possible, such as language systems and cultural codes, poststructuralism challenges these structures, emphasizing the instability of meaning and the role of power in the production of knowledge. As an analytical framework and methodology, poststructuralism provides tools for deconstructing texts, ideas, and societal structures. It serves as a means of analyzing and understanding the complexities of language, power relations, and social constructs. Poststructuralism arises out of the postmodern condition and is influenced by the postmodern lived experience, but it also offers ways of making sense of and critiquing postmodernism and previous cultural dominance. A key characteristic of poststructuralism is the decentering of the subject. Poststructuralism questions the idea of a coherent, autonomous self, suggesting that the individual is constructed through language, social interactions, and cultural contexts. Poststructuralism asserts that meanings are not fixed, but are constantly shifting due to a play of differences and differals in language, a concept that Jacques Derrida terms différance. Deconstruction, a method developed by Derrida, involves analyzing texts to reveal inherent contradictions and to show how meaning is dependent on context, thereby undermining the idea of stable, singular interpretations. Michel Foucault's work emphasizes how power relations shape knowledge and discourse, influencing what is considered true. By analyzing institutions, practices, and discourses, Foucault demonstrates how societal norms and truths are constructed and maintained through power dynamics. This approach provides a methodology for critiquing existing structures and for understanding the complexities of social relations in a postmodern society. Poststructuralism also critiques binary oppositions, such as good versus bad or male versus female, by showing how these oppositions are culturally constructed and serve to reinforce hierarchical structures. This analytical framework allows for a more nuanced understanding of identity, difference, and the interplay of social forces. While poststructuralism arises out of a postmodern world, it also serves as a way of making sense of and critiquing postmodernism itself. It provides tools for analyzing the fragmented, pluralistic, and often contradictory nature of postmodern culture, offering insights into how meanings are constructed and deconstructed in various contexts. Major figures in poststructuralism include Jacques Derrida, who, in works like Of Grammatology and Writing and Difference, both from 1967, introduced deconstruction, emphasizing the fluidity of meaning and the impossibility of fixed interpretations. Michel Foucault explored the relationship between power and knowledge in works like Discipline and Punish from 1975 and The History of Sexuality from 1976, providing methodologies for analyzing societal institutions and discourses. Roland Barthes, in The Death of the Author from 1967, argued that the author's intentions are not the ultimate source of a text's meaning, shifting the focus to the reader and the interplay of texts. Julia Kristeva, in works like Revolution in Poetic Language from 1974 and Desire in Language from 1980, introduced the concept of intertextuality and explored the semiotic aspects of language, blending psychoanalytic theory with linguistic analysis. Poststructuralism's analytical frameworks have been applied across various fields, including literary criticism, cultural studies, philosophy, and the social sciences. Poststructuralism provides methodologies for deconstructing texts, ideologies, and societal structures, revealing the underlying assumptions and power dynamics that shape them. Postmodernism and poststructuralism are interconnected movements that both emerge from and respond to the complexities of the late 20th century cultural landscape. They share a skepticism of absolutes, challenging the notion of universal truths and fixed meanings, and emphasizing the subjective nature of knowledge. Both highlight the centrality of language in constructing reality and critique Enlightenment ideals, questioning the emphasis on reason, progress, and the autonomous subject. However, they differ in their focus and applications. Postmodernism is a broad cultural phenomenon and way of life, reflecting changes in art, architecture, literature, and society at large. It embodies the lived experience of a postmodern world characterized by fragmentation, pluralism, and the blurring of boundaries. Postmodernism influences how people perceive reality, engage with culture, and construct identities. In contrast, poststructuralism is primarily an analytical framework and methodology. It arises out of the postmodern condition as a way of making sense of and critiquing both postmodernism and previous cultural dominance. Poststructuralism provides tools for deconstructing texts, discourses, and societal structures, revealing the instability of meanings and the influence of power relations. It remains more theoretical, focusing on the analysis of how knowledge and truths are constructed and deconstructed. Poststructuralism can be seen as both a product of and a response to the postmodern world. It acknowledges the fragmented and pluralistic nature of postmodern culture, but seeks to provide methodologies for critically examining and understanding these complexities. By deconstructing the assumptions and structures underlying cultural phenomena, poststructuralism offers insights into the dynamics of power, identity, and meaning in a postmodern society. In conclusion, postmodernism and poststructuralism are intertwined yet distinct movements that have significantly influenced contemporary thought and culture. Postmodernism represents a cultural phenomenon and a way of life, reflecting the complexities, contradictions, and pluralism of the late 20th and early 21st centuries. It challenges grand narratives and embraces diversity, affecting art, literature, architecture, and everyday experience. Poststructuralism, on the other hand, provides an analytical framework and methodology for deconstructing texts, discourses, and societal structures. Arising out of the postmodern condition, it serves as a means of making sense of and critiquing postmodernism and previous cultural dominance. By emphasizing the instability of meaning and the role of power in the construction of knowledge, poststructuralism encourages critical examination and deeper understanding of the complexities of contemporary society. Understanding the differences and similarities between postmodernism and poststructuralism enriches our comprehension of late 20th century thought and its impact on today's cultural and intellectual landscape. Both movements encourage a critical examination of assumptions, promoting a more nuanced and multifaceted view of reality.